Hey everybody, it's Tammy and welcome to the first of what I hope is a series of little reviews for the Bionicle books. I'm going to skip over Chronicles altogether and just start at the adventures because I think that's just where they're more interesting. This was the first year we had Greg Farshtey writing an entire series of novels, so today we'll be fittingly starting off with Bionicle Adventures 1, Mystery of Metru Nui. So this entire series uses a framing device that is set soon after The Mask of Light, and specifically comic 15, where Turaga Vakama reveals to the Toa Nuva that they were not the first Toa, but interestingly it turns out that they have not actually revealed who those Toa were yet. So at the start of this novel, Tahu approaches Vakama and says, "Can you please finally tell us what the hell happened in Metru Nui?" And so here we are. After that little kind of introduction set in the present day, we jump back 1,000 years where the Matoran, where the Toa Metru have just been transformed, and it kind of sets up the premise where Vakama has his vision, finds out he has to find the Great Discs, he has to find the Matoran who know where the Great Discs are, and so the Toa Metru go off and go on their separate trips, and it's those separate trips we follow throughout the rest of the novel. They all more or less follow the same pattern. Go to the Matoran's home, find some clues, go to somewhere within the Metru, there's some sort of disaster or mystery they have to kind of solve, and at the end of it they find the Matoran. They rendezvous back at the Great Temple and realise most of the issues they had were probably because of Ukmu setting the Matoran up, because Ukmu has been harassed by Nadiki to get him the Great Discs. But they decide not to hand him in, and indeed the next thing they're going to do is find the Great Discs, which leads them on straight to Bionicle Adventures 2. At that point we head back to the present day in the epilogue where Turaga Vakama basically says, "I've had enough, I'm going to bed." And the Toa Nuva do the whole typical, "Oh, you will tell more, won't you? Oh, yeah, sure, okay." But there is a really nice moment with Takanuva, who smartly heads off some of the readers' questions and is like, "Hang on a minute, I was a Matoran, why don't I remember this?" And Vakama doesn't answer him, but just says, "It's fine, relax my dudes, you'll find out." It's in character for Takua because chronicler, curious. If that seems kind of brief, it's because it's a really straightforward novel and I kind of want to get onto the more interesting ones later on. So thoughts I had on the book. The story structure is really straightforward, but that's fine because it has to introduce a whole new location in a different time period, a new societal structure essentially, and it's a lot of new. It's all new, and even though we've known these characters as Turaga for a few years at this point, we've not really gone into their personalities very well before, so essentially we're looking at new characterizations. So I think the simple story structure is good, and actually we get to see how they think, and also it kind of really highlights what's different about these Toa as opposed to the Toa Mata, who were kind of created as such and are kind of these legendary heroes. They all have this moment where they have to use their power basically for the first time, and they only kind of are just able to do it. It's really difficult for them. There's this really weird fish out of water dynamic. We see them going back to their Metru. They haven't got the endorsement of like the city's authorities, so they keep bumping into these Matoran, and the reactions range from kind of hostile or skeptical to kind of in awe and really curious, like, "Oh, I've never met a Toa before." I think it's Wenua, when he says that he is Toa Wenua, they're like, "Wenua's an archivist, what are you talking about, mate?" It's just kind of funny, and it's cool because it kind of makes us nostalgic because they've only just become Toa. We see their nostalgia for a life that they've now left that we've never seen before, but by framing it in that way we already feel the history of it more effectively, and it makes us more invested in their plight, what's at stake, their city, their home. Particularly given that it's all going to go to pot later on. So yeah, I think that works. Greg is also very good at like economical world building. It's maybe a bit exposition heavy, but I don't mind it. And I think what helps is that he tends to explain not just how things work, but also their significance to the characters. So we go to the Protodermis Reclamation Yard, and it's described as like a graveyard for mask makers. They don't like going there. It's little things like that. At the same time, he kind of laces in these elements that we're familiar with. I mean, the framing device is set in the modern day with characters we already know, and then the first thing it does after that is actually give us a very short scene with Kapura, who not everyone will be familiar with, but a lot of fans would have been. And there's lots of references to things we know already. Masks of power. Protodermis. Puku gets a name shout here. The 6 Matoran are possibly a little bit annoying. I'm not sure if they're annoying in a way that's okay, or if they're annoying in a way that's annoying. But I like that there's kind of this ambiguity. Okay, they want personal glory. That's a recurrent theme in this. They want personal glory, but most of them aren't willing to trade the city's safety for it, or risk it. So a lot of them by the end of the book are like, okay, I don't even want anything to do with this now, but like I'm stuck for the time being. Vizola has a toxic dependence on Nakama. I originally wrote this as Vizola wants to f Nakama, but actually, that degree of stalking behaviour? No. Vizola was like 3 weeks away from murdering that chick. That's where that behaviour tends to lead to. It's if I can't have you, no one can. Oh, and speaking of Vizola, there's one bit I do actually quite like when Nakama is searching her home, and there's a safe she's got to open up and there's a code, and she's like, well, it can't be the Metru disc code, that's too obvious. So she goes to all the other ones, and it's like, oh wait, it was the Metru. Possibly like a little meta nod to the obviousness of the puzzles in the promo CD. Some quick continuity notes. In the opening, it said that Turaga hid this knowledge away for thousands of years. Obviously, we now know that that's only 1,000 years, so typo there. Nadiki seems to just know who the Matoran who are about to turn into Toa are, and who the Matoran who know the location of the Great Discs are. I think that is eventually answered by the whole tampering, like the Order of Matanui tampering Makuta's knowledge of who has the what's and tells the Khan who to be the Toa. I'll get into it as we get to the later novels, but it's never really clearly addressed. Oh, Coley is referenced a lot in this novel, which is completely wrong and dropped, I think, by the second book. And it's, I think, anytime you hear Coley in this novel, I think you just got to replace it in your head with Akalini, and if they say Coley stick, you just think disc launcher. One of the Metru Matoran asks Nakama where she's come from and if she's here to stay, which seems quite appropriate actually when you learn that Metru doesn't seem to have any of its homegrown heroes. They all seem to have come from other lands. Makes you wonder if there's like a far right movement. Metru Nui jobs for Metru Nui Tower. A lot of the Matoran here are just called generic names like the guard or it's the attendant, but in the promo CD-ROMs those are actually shown to be characters that we know, which is nice. And it's funny that we get Heat Vision Rakshi in this book like 6 years or something before they had a big role in 2010. And it's interesting also they don't seem to know the link with Rakshi and Makuta. So I thought that was odd. But yeah, on the whole, this book does what it needs to do, and it does it at a fairly brisk clip, which stops it from getting boring. So yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at Trial by Fire. Anyway, I hope you liked this little recap, and I'll see you soon for another video.